On the Republican campaign schedule this year, you guys, there were supposed to be 2 debates after Iowa and before the New Hampshire primary. Remember that? We all blocked it out on our calendars. We all planned to be here. This was one of the things that was going to happen. It was awkward because they were only a few days apart, but there's only 8 days between Iowa and New Hampshire. They were going to squeeze in 2 debates between Iowa and New Hampshire. 2 more chances for the candidates to make final appeals to New Hampshire voters before the polls opened in New Hampshire today. Did those happen?
No.
They did not. No, they did not. Those debates did not happen because Donald Trump is refusing to debate this year. Nikki Haley said it would be pointless to hold another debate without Trump when, in her words, Ron DeSantis was closer to 0 than he was to her. So why would she bother talking to him? This is sort of a fair point, but that does mean there were no New Hampshire debates at all. Now, my in-laws live in New Hampshire. I have lots of family and lots of acquaintances in New Hampshire. I spend lots of time in New Hampshire. I did not expect to hear this, but I did anecdotally hear a lot of people say that they were mad there were no New Hampshire debates. I mean, the Republican primary debates, none of them included the frontrunner, none of them included Trump, but they were in like Wisconsin and Florida and California, and none of them were in New Hampshire because there were supposedly going to be these 2 dedicated New Hampshire debates, both of them off. And so people in New Hampshire, at least anecdotally in my experience, were mad about that. But more broadly, that is becoming kind of a theme this year. I mean, more so than at any time since the Civil War, this is the election in which we're deciding whether or not to keep a democracy. But there's not very much democracy in this contest thus far, right? With an incumbent president, which is true anytime you have an incumbent president, there's no real primary on the Democratic side. It may be the shortest primary ever on the Republican side, which is what we've been talking to Steve Kornacki about all night. Supporters of the frontrunner are emphatically demanding that everybody has to clear the field so we can stop with all this darn voting. The voting is so offensive. We've got no debates for the Democratic nominee. We've got no debates for the likely Republican nominee. Very possibly, we've got no general election debates at all because neither Trump nor Biden has debated thus far. Neither of them seems to want to. And so why would they? We are now in a fight to save democracy in this country, but we are trying to fight for it without using democracy to fight for it, which is, I don't know. I mean, it feels historically unprecedented, but if there's one thing we've learned, nothing is. Joining us now is NBC News presidential historian Michael Beschloss. Michael, we're so happy to have you with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Me too. Thank you, Rachel.
The lack of democracy in this democratic process does feel a little bit circumstantial. There are different reasons for it on the Democratic side than on the Republican side. However that may be, they're combining to give us a process in which everybody's talking about the fight for democracy, and it does feel like not a very democratic process this time.
No, that's exactly right. And you have written, for instance, about the fact that there was a suggestion in 1940 and 1944 that Franklin Roosevelt, because there was a war on, perhaps should appeal to suspend elections so that the country would benefit. And Roosevelt said, you know, the best way of deciding on a president and a Congress is more democracy, not less. And, you know, the other thing, Rachel, you know, just to make people feel a little bit better about this, if Donald Trump tied up the Republican nomination for president tonight for 2024, and he probably did, let's ask the question, did the Republicans get their strongest candidate to run against Joe Biden? I don't think so. The polls suggest that Nikki Haley would be a much stronger candidate than Donald Trump. So one way you look at a process is to say, does it include enough, you know, states and voters coming in on this so that it's a real judgment? The answer in this case would be no. You know, this is after Iowa and New Hampshire. They have decided who's going to lock up one of the nominations of the 2 major parties if it is locked up tonight or in the next few weeks. The other thing is you want a process that's going to get you the candidate who has at least a great chance to win. And the Republicans have not done this. You've got someone who has had this cornucopia of forthcoming trials and indictments, someone who has promised, just as you've said, Rachel, to suspend the Constitution and institute essentially a presidential dictatorship if he's elected. That's not going to be necessarily a great vote getter in a fall presidential election. And the other thing is that you know, this is not someone who's exactly the most self-disciplined candidate the Republicans could have for the presidency. Look at the way he's been talking during the last week. He's not in control of what he says. He confuses Nancy Pelosi with Nikki Haley. He makes other mistakes that seem to be getting more rather than less. If I were a Republican, which I'm not, I would say this has ended too quickly and has saddled us with a candidate who may turn out to be unelectable.
Michael, if we're also atrophying the muscle that is debating, presidential debating, if we lose presidential debates, and we lose it on the Democratic side this time because you got an incumbent president, you often lose it in that circumstance. We lost it on the Republican side because there's a pseudo-incumbent Republican who's decided to sort of take that privilege for himself and refuse to debate. Both of those nominees, or likely nominees, don't seem to want to debate for the general. If we lose presidential debates in this cycle, what are we losing as a country?
We're losing a lot, because what we have demanded as a country in 1960 and since beginning in 1976, when the tradition was resumed, at least in the fall, and also in most of those years during primary campaigns, we have demanded of potential candidates, we want to see what you're like when you're out of your comfort zone. And out of your comfort zone doesn't mean submitting to a softball interview on Fox News. It means going into a debate when someone who is running against you and wants the same job, you know, takes a few cracks at you and tries to knock you off your feet. Let's see how well you're able to maintain yourself. That's a crucial requirement of whoever is going to be the next president at a time that's going to be very difficult in this country and difficult around the world.
Michael, it's Alex Wagner. You know, we talk about whether or not there's a historical precedent for any of this. And it seems like what Trump is trying to do is fairly singular in terms of modern American politics. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the last guy to try to do this and succeed at it was Grover Cleveland. Is that right? And if it is right, is there anything analogous to in terms of where the country was at or where the parties were at then and where they are at now?
Well, I think maybe 1912, where, as you know, Theodore Roosevelt, who had been president, ran for president again, first lost the Republican nomination, and then ran as a progressive in the fall and got a huge number of votes. Although he did not win, he was a spoiler and allowed Woodrow Wilson to be elected with a pretty slim share of the vote in the low 40s. And you see where I'm going, which is that if we're in a situation where there are third parties or third movements like what I consider the egregious no labels or Robert Kennedy Jr. or some of these others who chip away at a direct confrontation between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, we could wind up with results that really don't reflect the thinking of the American people, because it could be that someone could be elected with a much narrower sliver of the vote, just as Wilson was in 1912. I have not too much doubt that if you have a direct conflict between Joe Biden and Donald Trump has a harder time winning. On the other hand, if you have spoiler candidates or movements who chip off various pieces of what might otherwise be Joe Biden's vote, you could have a situation like 2000, where Al Gore was probably defeated by third movements, by people like Ralph Nader, or other cases in history like 2016, where Jill Stein and others chipped off what might have been Hillary Clinton's ability to win the Electoral College.
NBC News presidential historian Michael Beschloss. Michael, it is fantastic to have you here, always, but particularly tonight. Thank you so much for being with us.